Sunday at 5 p.m. Studio B for Strange Universe. The Strange Universe.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Are you a fan of rock and roll? Does it get your feet tapping and your hands clapping? Then be sure to check out Crypt Rick's Rock and Roll Hour every Friday night, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern and Standard Time on Studio B, right here at revolutionradio.com, where we get down and talk all things rock.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning!
Extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel.
Well, more technical difficulties with Revolution Radio. That's okay. Or maybe it's Rumble Studio. Greetings, Earth Explorers, and welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future, and in here the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us as we endeavor to treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. This is the voice of the revolution. And we are streaming to you live with our good friends at Revolution Radio on freedomslips.org, the #1 listener-supported network in the entire country. We're also streaming to you live on several video platforms, all at the same time, on Rumble, YouTube, X, DLive, Foxhole, and Truth Refugee, everywhere where good podcasting can be found, live and free. Never a paywall here for the live show or the archives, and there are thousands of hours out there you can listen to at your leisure. I would like to recognize a lot of the people in the chat room. Let's see, I think it was Monty6223 that was in first tonight from YouTube. That's great. And Scott Woolley's here, Graham Manon, Della Meow, Jim Roddle, Fab Letty. Let's see. Flippy2 is here. Let's see who we got over here on Foxhole. We have Rasta is in. Oh, good. I'm sorry about that. I thought the intro was playing, but I guess it wasn't. No sound from Revolution Radio. It's got to be a Rumble Studio issue. Let's see if I can raise the volume up a little bit. Can you hear that a little better now? Should be loud enough. I got a good indication on my... let's see. I suppose I can raise that up a little bit. How's that? Does that sound a little better? Okay. Sounds good here. All right. Thank you. So I want to start with this story. Normally I would wait a little bit to kind of get into this heavy stuff, but I've been talking about this for months and weeks. I've been raising the alarm, and last week I raised it even more. I've been warning about Iran making a deal with Oman. You know, we've thought about Oman as kind of being an issue, non-issue in this whole Middle Eastern conflict that we're wrestling with, trying to straighten up the Strait of Hormuz and open it up. But I've been warning that Iran would make a deal with Oman, which would give the control of both coasts of the Strait of Hormuz. Well, today, my warnings have come to fruition. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Esmaeil Baghaei, said Iran and Oman have reached an understanding on the geographic coordinates for a shipping route through the Strait of Hormuz, and a joint announcement is being finalized, provided certain third parties did not interfere. So the spokesman added that any such agreement between Iran and Oman would not by itself guarantee security in the strategic waterway. In other words, passers-by beware. The proposed deal between Iran and Oman would give Tehran complete control over ships entering the Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz. And that is not part of the deal. That's not part of the deal that was on the table today with Trump. And despite the apparent step toward yielding to Iranian demands, the source pushed back against assertions by President Trump that a deal reopening the strait was imminent, saying important details still had to be agreed. In other words, no deal, Mr. Trump. The geographical coordinates of the route proposed by Iran and Oman in the Strait of Hormuz have been agreed upon. If some third parties do not obstruct this process, meaning the United States, the joint statement between the two countries is in the final review and drafting stage. The understanding between Iran and Oman in itself cannot guarantee the safety of the strait for passing ships. Oops. Because the factors that create insecurity in the Strait of Hormuz, particularly those stemming from the United States, such as the naval blockade and other aggressive and threatening actions against Iran and its interests, still exist. Well, no shit. So initially, Iran would send ships, including oil tankers, through the waterway to ensure it is free of mines before the strait opens to other shipping. In other words, you better remove the blockade and let our ships go to China and deliver our oil to China so we can get paid, or else. Ships would not be charged fees during the temporary arrangement, the people added, for the Iranian ships, that is. If a deal holds and the strait reopens, the U.S. would lift its naval blockade on Iranian ports and reinstate a waiver to allow Iran to sell oil and petroleum-related products, one of the people said. That doesn't sound like unconditional surrender to me. Does that sound like unconditional surrender to you? No, I didn't think so. Iranian pundits and state media continue touting this as a victory over the U.S. and Israel. Ali Akbar Darani, a Tehran-based researcher at the Center for Strategic Studies, has said Iran is aiming to, and I don't even really want to use this word, but this is their propaganda word, to stabilize its control over the Strait of Hormuz. In other words, reassert it and remove the United States from the picture. That's what they want to do. Once Iran opens up the strait, not the U.S., once Iran reopens the strait, Darani said Iran is still likely to put in place a mechanism to ensure that peace will prevail. Doesn't that sound like the empire? We've moved the Death Star into position. We will destroy any planet completely that disagrees with us, but we're here to establish peace in the galaxy. This also as Yemen's Houthis continue a siege-for-siege blockade of Red Sea passage, targeting Saudi-linked vessels of Yemen's coast. You heard recently in the news of Mohammed bin Salman saying to President Trump, look, we need to scale back the military presence a little bit. Let's give diplomacy a chance. Well, this is why. Because there's a blockade against Saudi ships by the Houthis. So far today, I really haven't heard anything, and I've been listening right up to the moments before the program began tonight. The White House has remained quiet. This should actually scare the shit out of Tehran. Because when President Trump goes quiet, that is not a good thing. When he's out there blustering and, saying, look, time is on my side. I'm not pushed by anything. I've got no deadlines. That's just rhetoric. But when he goes quiet, I'm just saying tonight, there could be a totally different set of action going on. Iran and Omani-driven talks for terms of the Hormuz Strait's reopening. Tehran, however, has not remained quiet as U.S. bombs have fallen silent over the past couple of days. That's to kind of give them a last chance to breathe. And what should come out as the exhale is we surrender. But Iran says new Hormuz route should be valid for 2 to 4 months. The new Oman deal to close temporary Hormuz shipping routes. The Garababadi said Iran received messages from the U.S. Iran said in messages it's ready to return to its pledges. And via Israeli media, though without official confirmation from D.C. at all, approaching an agreement on opening the Strait of Hormuz, N12 reports citing American officials, the signing of the agreement is possible as early as tonight. I really honestly don't think this is part of Trump's deal. I don't think that Marco Rubio knows about this. I don't think Hegseth knows about this, or at least they haven't publicly acknowledged it. I've been saying this for about 8 weeks now. And specifically for the last week, I've said, now you need to keep a close eye on what Iran is arranging with Oman. And it wasn't in the news yet, but I was saying it. I just had a feeling something was going on. Approaching an agreement on reopening the straits. Meanwhile, much of the above depends on what mood Trump is in. Of course, Trump is saying the deal is moving along very nicely. I personally think he's been hoodwinked again. And I think the chat room agrees with me. But the Iranian side has continued to insist that there are currently no peace or ceasefire talks happening, but only the Iran-Oman negotiations, which focus on reopening the Strait of Hormuz and putting themselves on the opposite side of the United States. They are going to charge. Oh, we lost. Let's bring them back on. Yeah, okay, we're back in. That sound indicates to me that Revolution Radio dropped off the grid, but now we're back. Consistent with this narrative, Al Jazeera freshly cites Iran's state broadcaster IRIB, which reports that talks between Iran and Oman over the Strait of Hormuz have nothing to do with the United States. In other words, you are a non-issue, President Trump. We are ignoring you. Washington is presenting it as a U.S.-Oman deal for the straits reopening, even if it fundamentally remains an Iranian-Omani proposal. Yeah, I think we're about to see some more fireworks. Trump, in his latest comments, echoed his Treasury Secretary from the day prior, that was yesterday, saying it could happen tomorrow or the next day. This was on the heels of traveling to Los Angeles yesterday for a fundraising event hosted by the Republican National Committee. A lot of progress has been made. Yeah, the rally out there in Vegas is epic. He told Fox that while the White House is now having very good discussions with Iranian officials as part of an all-day negotiation, and that the Strait of Hormuz reopening is going to be very soon. If they back out again, they're going to get hit really hard, the president said. According to Bloomberg, the U.S., Iran, and Oman are preparing to announce a 60-day agreement on shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, but the Iranian side has not affirmed this. They have their own deal. So, as it stands, Tehran says it's driving the Oman talks and that Washington has been sidelined. They're not in the room. They're not at the table. While the White House claims that it has direct involvement in shaping the outcome. Sounds like somebody's lying to me, and I don't think it's Trump. All sides do seem in agreement that the technical details and mechanics of the deal are currently being worked on. I think it's been done. Under the current proposal, ships entering the strait would use the channel closest to Iran, not the one that gives them a little lead time should drones attack ships going through the strait, with Iran coordinating inbound traffic while vessels leaving the strait would use the Omani side, with Muscat managing outbound traffic. The proposal also includes a service fee, might be, $1 million a ship, with the revenue split between Iran and Oman. The United States isn't going to get a penny out of it. According to the source, the broad outlines have largely been agreed upon, with the remaining discussions focused on implementing and timing. Axios reported something similar, in which the U.S. is nearing a Hormuz deal. Axios added that no tolls or fees would be charged during the 60-day period, and the parties would work on clearing naval mines from the median lane of the strait within 30 days. That should have been going on for the last 2 months. As for the claim of no tolls, this would once again be just semantics, given the Iranian and Omani sides have consistently signaled the need for fund collection under the headers of, paid protection. safe navigation. You don't want to be hit by drones, do you? Then pay the hell up, right? There's also been some progress on agreements for third-party demining operations, but as Rubio reminded the world yesterday, Washington still insists resolving the nuclear issue. What nuclear issue? We haven't been discussing the nuclear issue. What are you talking about? That's what's coming out of Tehran. The Iranians are not at the table. They're not. If they are at the table, they're lying. So here's one version that's out there, and I may throw a little spin on this of my own. All inbound traffic of ships through the strait into the Gulf would go in a northern lane toward Iranian waters. They want to search, seize, monitor, and threaten all ships coming in. All outbound traffic through the strait and into the Arabian Sea would go in a southern lane toward Omani waters so they can search, seize, and exact tolls against ships going that way. And they say no tolls or fees will be charged for the 60-day period, but that's probably not true. The parties would work on clearing naval mines. After the median lane is cleared, it would be used for inbound and outbound traffic under the terms of a permanent arrangement to be negotiated between, not the U.S., no, just between Oman and Iran. Iran should be a non-issue. Oman should be like underneath a non-issue. This should be a totally free world decision. The straits are open, no tolls, no threats. All ships going in, all ships going out will do so freely, as though in international waters. I'm sorry, President Trump, if you're listening tonight, I'm sorry if I'm on the opposite side of this with you, although I don't think I am. That's the way it should be. While Iranians are saying that at this point talks are limited to Iran and Oman, U.S. isn't at the table. It goes without saying that the U.S. is a key factor. We've got a report from State TV today, citing an informed source who said that even if a deal were reached today, the breach of the Memorandum of Understanding agreement by the U.S. means there won't be a reopening of the strait. One of the key points of concern for the Iranians regarding the strait is the removal of the naval blockade by the Americans. Get out, they're saying. We won, you lost. You threw the best you had at us for however long you've been bombing the crap out of us, and we didn't move one single inch. They have been consistently saying that this is one of the preconditions. Move your ships out, admit defeat, and go home, and let us charge what we're going to charge and threaten who we're going to threaten. And if we want to close the strait again, Iran's got one side, Oman's got the other side, and we can close it going in both directions. If Axios and some of their fake stream news outlet reports are to be believed, the scheme is advancing not on the U.S. side, but on the Iranian side. The two regional sources said the Araghchi agreement in principle over the weekend, but still needed approval from Iran's supreme leader, Mojtaba Khomeini, which, if he's still alive, and the Supreme National Security Council, which I think is the office right next to the Deputy Chief Director of Paper Towels. Yes, I'm pretty sure it is. A U.S. official and a regional source said Iranian leadership completed its approval process yesterday. Yeah, so if all of the above comes into force, it will widely be seen as a victory for Tehran, not for the U.S. It will leave Iran with greater control over energy transit than even before the war. Simultaneously, this would be Trump essentially cutting and running in order to financially extricate American forces from the deepening quagmire, while approaching the 6-month mark since Operation Epic Fury started. For example, even the gray lady, New York Times, the rag that it is, the fish wrapper that it is, Iran and Oman are closing in on an agreement to reopen shipping traffic in the Strait of Hormuz, according to Iranian and American officials. But if the accord goes into effect, it's going to come at a very high price. Ratifying Tehran's control over what before the war was an open international waterway is now under their control. Markets would breathe a sigh of relief, oil prices would come down, Tehran would be in the driver's seat again. U.S. officials cited in the same report have only said the Hormuz scheme would be temporary. And so the ongoing contrasting interpretations suggest another tenuous and shaky agreement in the works. So people have asked me, why don't we just go take Karg Island? Why don't we just go occupy these islands and control the pumping stations? So any ships coming in and loading up with oil are under our control. Well, see, here's the issue. The issue is that the general of the Marines for the last 10 years has been redirecting the focus of the Marines. No tanks, no amphibious equipment, no practicing of expeditionary forces taking and occupying beaches or facilities along the coast. They don't know how to do it anymore. All the people that knew how to do that have already retired. It's all new Marines now, and now they're flying drones, and now they're doing cyber attacks and crazy stuff like that. Special forces, maybe if they're called in to do something quick and nasty like they did in Venezuela, but nothing to actually occupy and hold a piece of real estate. If Iran asserts continued control over the passageway, and this is way more control than they had before Epic Fury started, the opening might come with a geopolitical cost. Iranian officials say they are designing the accord to ratify their capacity to control the strait and therefore retain strategic leverage. That's a key word here, leverage, that they did not employ before the war. In other words, they won, we lost, the world lost, and I don't think China is all that worried because China is the headwaters of the money to Iran. They buy about 80% of everything Iran makes. Everything that Iran produces as far as oil, China buys, or should I say about 80% of China's energy comes from Iran. So they're a big, big buyer. And I kind of saw this coming like 4 months ago when I realized that maybe the United States would control the Strait of Hormuz. They would actually control the flow of energy to China. And if China misbehaved in some way toward the United States, like let's say, I don't know, interfering with our elections or cyber attacking or printing and dumping counterfeit cash into our country, which they've been doing for a long, long time. Again, attacking our election infrastructure. We could sanction China by just choking off their oil. We could say, not so fast. It's going to be pretty cold winter in China if you do this, but we're no longer in that control. Now that Oman has made a deal with Iran, they now control both coasts, and they control it more formidably than they did before the war. Even though they don't have a navy, even though they don't have an air force, even though a lot of their drone factories and drone launching capabilities have been truncated severely, they're going to be in control. Why? How could this possibly have happened? I mean, I'll ask the chat room. Some of them may have a good answer or two. Okay. 80% of China's oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz. Used to come discounted from Venezuela, but now it's not coming discounted from Venezuela anymore. So that's a fact. Without Chinese money, Iran is in a hurting status. And so what's going on in the United States? Wow, holy crap. Look at all the primaries. Now, you might at first think, what's going on, with the communists winning all these primaries? We had a communist just win the primary in Michigan. Well, The Massachusetts Democrats are pushing a kind of DEI-style religious preference bill that would help prioritize the hiring of not Indians, not H-1B visa holders, Muslims, for state jobs. Let that sink in for a second. Massachusetts, that's where Boston is, where we control a lot of the nation's capital for investment, for management is in Boston. Boston is a financial capital of the East Coast, notwithstanding Charlotte, North Carolina, of course. But so they're prioritizing Muslims to be put into these state jobs to control these regulations, just like they do in Minnesota. The bill is called An Act Promoting the Civil Rights and Inclusion, don't you love those words? Civil rights and inclusion of American Muslims in the Commonwealth, which would raise a commission of 11 Muslims. I didn't know we made decisions based upon religion in this country. We don't make decisions based on being a Catholic. I mean, Utah might make decisions based upon being a Mormon, but we don't make decisions based upon religion in this country. But somehow they're going to raise a commission of 11 Muslims who would advise and recommend hiring practices favoring Muslims to fill appointed government positions in the Bay State. What do you want to bet in 6 months Boston looks way different than it does now? The bill would also go much further than just hiring policy. Indeed, backers hope that the commission would cajole the state government, those are the legislators in Massachusetts, where Mitt Romney was employed and where a lot of these most radical Democrats are, to consider Muslim issues, like Sharia law, in a wide range of areas, from lawmaking to education to healthcare, business outreach, and cultural recognition, and would also have an input on so-called hate crimes, like Islamophobia. Yeah, which I think everybody should have Islamophobia myself. But according to backers, the bill would create a link between Massachusetts Muslim communities and insider government operations. It would give the Muslims on this commission the power to create research papers and guidance for government practices, and then allow them to use the color of government, that's why we call it a color revolution, to give them a governmental authority to reach out to the business community to further entrench their ideals, like no pork, like no dogs, like women need to be escorted and covered up. The commission would be tasked with imposing themselves on the legislative process if they think bills under consideration would affect Muslims, and it would give the commission a say in how the state treats Islamophobia, as I said. How are they going to treat Islamophobia? Well, they're probably going to treat it with fines, jail time, pulling business licenses, insurance, things like that. Massachusetts has always prided itself on being a leader in equality and civil rights. Sounds so much like the empire. It just blows my mind. A legacy this bill builds upon. That's State Democrat Senator Jamie Eldridge said this. American Muslims in my district and across the Commonwealth give me tons of money. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant to say. American Muslims in my district and across the Commonwealth enrich our communities. Oh, that's what it says. Wow, I messed up there. I misread that. Students, healthcare workers, educators, small business owners, and civic leaders. This commission will help the state better understand and address the challenges Muslims face while strengthening inclusion and civic participation. And God help us if you come to a school board meeting and say, what the hell are you doing teaching Sharia law in my school? Islamophobia, arrest them all. By the way, Schumer this cycle has become something of a boogeyman for progressives, who have painted him as an establishment puppet master working to keep progressive candidates off the ticket. Whatever. Yeah, Monty says, I live near Boston. Their mayor is an outright communist. Mayor Wu, she certainly is. People in Boston are liberal moonbats when it comes to voting. Yeah, they are. And they're electing themselves right into a communist state. Democrats are united by a common purpose, putting a check on Donald Trump. That's their united purpose, by the way. We must fight Donald Trump. The Republicans have never been organized like this, and we have to defeat it. You know, look what we did. We brought you the Ku Klux Klan. We brought you Jim Crow laws. We brought literary tests for elections and all kinds of restrictions on black people voting. That's what we brought you. And Trump is trying to free the slaves, and we're just not going to have it. We must defeat his Republican enablers and take back the Senate. He and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, you know who she is, a total dingbat, whack job. We look forward to working with Abdul and Democrats across Michigan to win his seat in November. El Sayed defeated Representative Haley Stevenson, Democrat in Michigan. That's what I was talking about. Both of them are whacked out nut jobs. But El Sayed is going to lose so bad in November. It's going to be epic. In a close contest that was not called until Wednesday morning, the race was, and that's largely because Haley Stevens ran out of money. Yeah, see, the Democrat Party is broke. They had to mortgage their own building to raise money to keep the lights on. They don't have the ability to raise money because when it comes to the word DNC, it stands for do not contribute. Okay, all of their donors are holding back. And so what's happened is Haley and others have run out of money. They can't buy TV time. They can't buy attack ads. They can't do what they normally do to win elections. And so the communists have all kinds of money. They have money coming in from China. They have money coming in from all kinds of communist parties. And we're not talking about a small amount of money here. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And if you look at where this comes from, you can look at social media like, let's say, Instagram and I believe X. And what's happened is these DMs, what are called direct messages, not the general post that you see. The DMs were blowing up. They were blowing up, and it looked like bots at first. But once you do the analysis, they're not bots. They're communist organizations. And what they're doing is they're moving tons of money into these down ballot races like El Sayed, and they're beginning to take races from the Democrats who are out of money. So the Democrat Party is being usurped by the communists. Hopefully what happens is that even though the communists are winning in the primaries, they're not going to win in the general election this time, because they have tons of money, but they don't have the money the Republican Party has right now. And there are all kinds of PACs and organizations, citizens organizations that are going to run ads, and they're going to use the communists' own words against them. And hopefully what happens is Americans will come to the poll and say, not on my watch. We already fought a war over that. We're not fighting that war in this country. You're out. This time, because that's not the way that they lose. They might lose this time, but they won't lose next time. I mean, look at the squad. Look at them. Look at Alexandria Communist Cortez. Look at Ilhan Omar. Look at Ariana Presley. Look at Rashida Tlaib. These women are crazy. They're full of hatred and ignorance, and yet they've been reelected multiple times. The Young Turks, the guy who runs it, Cenk Uygur, had this vision years ago, but I think he kind of lost control of it because the playbook that he used was, let's go after these do-nothing Democrats that assume that they're going to be reelected over and over and over. They don't run campaigns. The the guy that AOC ran against in the Bronx was a 10-term Democrat. 10 terms he'd been in there. Did he do anything for the Bronx? Hell no, nothing. So it was easy for Cenk to come in with this actress whose name was Alexandria, and they ran her. They provided speeches for her, written by Barack Obama's speechmaker, excellent speechwriter, by the way. And by the way, after he wrote the first few speeches for AOC, he quit. He quit Obama, and I don't know if he's still writing speeches for AOC, but that's how she won. And she came in as a firebrand, sexy, young, woman, and she beat that guy. And we thought, oh, well, she won't last 2 years. But she did last 2 years. She lasted 4 years. She's going to last 6 years. She's got a pension, for crying out loud. She's worth tens of millions of dollars now. Yeah. Yeah. You think New Yorkers are stupid? Yes. Do you think Bostonians are stupid? Yes. Do you think the voters of Minnesota are stupid? Yes. But that's what they're counting on. And now they're going after Michigan. Well, Trump was up there speaking to the car companies up there, and he basically said, I've been better to you than your parents have been. And the automakers and auto workers union, they love Trump. He's absolutely saved them, putting a tariff on foreign-made cars, stimulating U.S. steel. Car companies that were going to make cars in Mexico are now moving back to the United States. He's been enormous for the American auto workers. Oh, but wait, that's Michigan, isn't it? That was Motor City for a long time, the most technologically advanced city on the planet for a long time. And they threw it all away. El Sayed has been expected to win by a large margin, and the state primaries returned relatively mixed results for progressives in the Wolverine state. He was supposed to win by a large margin. He didn't. He squeaked by. We don't even know if there was cheating involved. Probably was. I don't think they're going to be cheat big enough to beat the Republican candidate, though. It's just not going to happen. Mike Rogers is going to win. You think it's going to be close? I don't know, Blue Max. I don't know. I think Mike Rogers is going to slaughter El Sayed. All he has to do is use his own words against him. Yeah, Scott Woolley says he lives in Michigan. The cheating is so bad. I was in the auto business for a long, long time. I built cars. I worked for GM. I worked for Toyota for 10 years. And I made a lot of trips to Detroit because that's where the engineers are for everything from airbags to seat belts, and everybody's up there. So you make a lot of trips up there. And one time I decided to drive and not go up 65. I went up 77 all the way, which puts you on 696, coming in that way. So I was coming into Detroit from the east. And oh my God, it looked like a war zone. 10-foot holes burned out in the roofs of houses. 10-story buildings, all the windows broken out, the exterior of the building covered in graffiti, and the streets loaded with dunnage. Dunnage is steel racks that are used to transport parts from the recontainerization plant to the assembly plant. And they're specific. So they hold transmissions, and they hold rear axles, and they hold, headliners and stuff like that. Well, once that model year is over with, they just throw the dunnage away. They don't reuse the dunnage. So you have these big metal racks. They're like 8 feet long and 6 feet high, and thousands of them stacked on the bridges to form a barrier between one side of the freeway and the other side of the freeway, almost like there's a war zone on the other side, and they don't want people infiltrating into the residential areas. But it looked like a war zone to me. And that's not the Detroit that I grew up with. It's just horrendous. It was gone. Is that right, Tupac? I don't know. Livonia, Michigan had the most white per capita in the country. Really? Like more white than Pasadena, California? I don't know about that. If you say so, but it's a war zone nonetheless. Now, the west side of Detroit, on the other side of Dearborn, is still pretty well developed, as far as I know. A lot of people in Auburn Hills and over that way work at the billion-dollar Chrysler Research Center. That's still a pretty good area, but you get more east on the east side, and it's just gone. For a long time, the Chinese were buying up city blocks. They were buying up entire city blocks of burned out houses and wrecked duplexes and projects. And they were building something, it was called, I believe it was called Little China. Little China. And they were moving Chinese nationals in there by the tens of thousands. I don't know what it's like today. I honestly don't. But that's what was going on, back in 2010 to 2000, I think 16. Yeah. Well, $60 million spent on Stevens. She's still lost. I don't know if $60 million was actually spent on her because she's a total whack job anyway. And she was vulnerable, but I guarantee you that El Sayed spent more. And there might have been some election irregularities there that caused it. Yes, Washaki, when Detroit is the Democratic model of success. Well, it wasn't. I mean, from 1900 till about, I would say 1980, maybe 1990, maybe not, but close to 1990. Detroit was the most technologically advanced city in the world. It had everything. It had all the money. It was dominating the car industry. Oh no, it was about 1980. That's right. Because what had happened is, prior to that time, American-made cars only had 6 digits on the odometer, and that included the tenths. So when a car got to 99,999 miles, the odometer rolled over to 0 again. You started over, right? Well, in 1980, Mazda and Honda introduced vehicles with 7-digit odometers. Well, what's the significance in that, you say? Well, because in 1980, the Japanese were delivering cars to the United States that would go 400,000, 500,000 miles before being worn out. When a American-made car prior to 1980 hit about 90,000 miles, it was destined for the junkyard. But look what you could buy a car for. I mean, you could buy a brand new car for $3,500, $4,000. And then the DOT and the EPA started going after Detroit, and they doubled the price of cars. Between 1970 and 1980, the price of a car doubled. And between 1980 and 1990, they doubled it again. Between 1990 and 2000, they doubled it again. Wait a minute, that's doubling 3 times. Oh yes, that's right. And then in 2000, from 2000 to 2008, it didn't even make it to 2010, it tripled. It tripled. So a car that you used to buy for $3,200 now costs $25,000. It put it out of reach. And it also caused Americans to say, wait a minute, why would I buy a vehicle that would only go maybe 120,000 miles and then it's a piece of crap, it's a junk. It only has a 3-year warranty, it guzzles gas. Why would I do that when I could buy a Japanese car that will look new, drive new, and stay great for 400,000 miles? Well, they answered the question by saying, I'm not. I'm going to buy a Japanese car. And that's what they did. And you'll remember when Nancy Pelosi and the progressives came up with this thing called, it was to get rid of gas guzzlers. What was it called? It was called cash for something. Anyway, what they did is they wanted to take gas guzzlers off the road, and they were giving people grants to basically trade in their old car and buy a new car. They got better mileage and cleaner for the environment, right? But the one thing the Democrats forgot to do was restrict it to American-made cars. And so what happened is all the American-made cars went to the junkyard and got smashed and shipped to China. And all the people bought Japanese cars. So what they really did is they put Detroit out of work. And that's exactly what happened. Cash for clunkers. That's right. Thank you, Cromwell. Cash for clunkers. So people traded in their American cars and they bought Japanese cars. And it was a great boon for Japan. And it was a horrible mess for the United States. And all those cars, and I had friends in the what's called the salvage business. After the motors and the expensive parts of the car were sold off, they smashed all those cars, put them on trains, took them to the coast, put them on ships, and shipped them to China. And that's what China used for steel. Yeah. I had a friend in the scrapyard business. I don't know. He probably had 8,000 cars in his yard, a pretty good sized yard for North Carolina, pretty good sized yard. I went over there 3 or 4 months after buying some body parts off him. I was fixing up a car that I was building a hot rod. And I went back there and the whole thing was dirt, just dirt, and his office. And I said, Brad, what the hell happened to all your cars? He said, China offered us top dollar. We smashed them all and shipped them. He made a fortune, absolute fortune, off selling all those cars out of the scrap business. He might be back in it now, but yeah, I don't know, Blue Max. No cars in Michigan last. It's not true. Detroit got the message, and they started building better things. The LS engine came out, which took the place of the old small block Chevy, the 283/350, which was a piece of junk. It had 2 rod journals on one cam, on one crank journal, and it was just a bad design. Now, the old 6-banger, the 250, that was a great engine. It had 1 rod, 1 journal, 1 rod, 1 journal, 1 rod, 1 journal. And that engine's used all over the world to this day. Toyota used it for a long, long time in Land Cruisers. But the LS engine, they have now made over 100 million of them, 100 million of them. And it's an outstanding engine. Totally revolutionized the small block V8. No distributor. Everything runs on a cam encoder and a crank encoder and an electronic control unit that bypasses the need for a distributor, which used to be the weak spot in the electrical system of any engine. Now the LS engines are in everything. I just put one in my RX-7 downstairs. Yeah, 5.3 liter, 540 horsepower. Great engine. So Detroit got the message. My truck has 280,000 miles on it, runs like a new one, doesn't burn any oil, gets 22 miles to the gallon. Everything still works on it. I got a little bit of wear on my driver's seat, but no tears. Carpet's in great condition. The dash hasn't fallen apart like they used to rot in the sunlight. They make a great vehicle. There's a reason why the Ford F-150 is the most popular selling vehicle in the United States, because they last. In fact, I think they had a commercial last year that said 90% of the Ford trucks built since 1970 are still on the road. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? 90% of the Ford trucks built since 1970. That's like 60 years, 56 years are still on the road. That's a statement. Now, they can afford to do it, of course, because trucks bring a lot more money and they make a lot more profit. Ford does not like making cars, and they don't make any margin on the cars. They want to make the cars in foreign countries, but Trump put tariffs on them, so now they have to make them in this country. And now you can't buy an American-made car for under $30,000. People just can't afford it. Only about 37% of Americans can walk into a new car dealership and buy a car. It's just out of their price range. Yes, cash for clunkers. What a great deal. That's what happens when Washington gets involved. Let's get all these old cars off the road, but let's forget to put in the bill that they have to buy an American car to replace it. Nope, they bought Japanese cars. That was a great deal. Great deal. Obama was wonderful at exporting American jobs. Right. I got you, Blue Max. I feel you. Let's see. I can get into this. The Russians have evidently improved their strike capabilities with drones against Ukraine. Ukraine is not able to stop the very smart Russian drones that are communicating with one another and running cover for one another, and they're able to get through. So, and it's clear that one cannot rest on its technological laurels in warfare. According to a growing casualty count, a large barrage of ballistic missiles fired by Russia on Ukraine has killed at least 21 people and wounded dozens more. The overnight attack has raised the alarm for Ukraine's Western backers, given it is being widely reported that among over 24 ballistic and anti-ship missiles fired, not a single solitary one, not one, was intercepted by Ukraine. That's bad. That's bad. It is bad for Ukraine. I guess it's good for Russia. It's a little bit tit for tat, though, because the Ukrainians have been attacking deep inside Russia and Crimea for months, and it's about time they got a little retribution. The attacks come on the heels of a record month. July saw over 380 missiles of all types launched on Ukraine, with government authorities citing the highest civilian casualties since 2022, with at least 377 civilians killed and another 2,129 wounded for the month of July. And it's largely because the Ukrainians are smart. They put their missile launchers on the top of apartment buildings. They put them outside of schools. When the war started over there in 2014, and they started going after the Russian nationals, it was devastating. They shot rockets, mortars. They used sniper teams. They killed over 14,000 ethnic Russians. And this is before any of the incursion. This was all Victoria Nuland's Azov battalion. And they did it basically for 8 years. For 8 years, they attacked unabated. Some of my friends went over to Ukraine to fight for the DPR against the Ukrainians, and here's what they told me. These are Ukrainians fighting against Ukrainians, basically, only we're talking about ethnic Russians fighting against Ukrainians or defending against Ukrainians. And they're smart. They know the tactics. But let me tell you what my friend Russell Bentley told me that he was fighting as I talked to him on the phone. In several of the firefights that he was in, he could see the uniforms that are being worn and the faces of the people that he was fighting. The uniforms had SS on the shoulder, like the old Nazis, because they were Nazis. But they were also fighting Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda fighters fighting on behalf of Ukraine, paid for by US dollars from Victoria Nuland's State Department, and killing ethnic Russians. And they killed a lot of them. They killed so many that there were so many orphans, they herded all the orphans into orphanages. Now, when's the last time you heard about an orphanage in the United States? We just don't have them, right? We have foster kids, but we don't have buildings, multi-story buildings, city block long buildings filled with kids, right? Where did all the kids come from? The kids came from dead parents. Victoria Nuland's State Department murdered them. And then they used their labs to run experiments on these kids. And then they sold those Russian kids to people all over the world. Right. Let that sink in while we take a break. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away. More America Free Radio right after this.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Tune in to the Family Industrial Complex podcast here on Revolution Radio, Studio B, every Wednesday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Get fit, empowered, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
The rooster has crowed out the opening bars of a new day. You've dragged yourself out of bed. You turn on your device. You want to know what's going on in the world. But you're hungry for a topical show that serves up those breakfast headlines just that little bit differently. Do you like your early morning news the way you like your eggs over easy, served with slathers of salsa-like sass? Do you like those first headlines of the day to deliver a punch as powerful as that first cup of joe? Join Mitchell Bupp at his breakfast table for Revolution in the Morning, where he will digest, dissect, and dismantle those new day's national and global news headlines with razor-sharp relish. Find Mitchell here at revolution.radio every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Studio B.
I will defend myself against their tyranny. Number 3 is my radio broadcast. I'm squarely in front of the public all the time, and they all know what's going on.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on public means for expanding its sphere of influence.
Hello, my name is John Wayne, and I do a broadcast here at freedomslips.com, revolution.radio, called The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
Freedom and fear are at war.
And folks, I assure you, we are in Defense Mission 1. As we journey perilously through this paradigm that we currently reside in, and I ask that you join me every Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
We shall never surrender.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for hanging in there while we took that short break. Now back to America Free Radio with host Brooks Agnew here at Revolution Radio.
We love our friends at Revolution Radio, and they do a great job for us. I'm humbled to be part of the organization of hosts on this network. We'll take a quick commercial break here just for a second. Those of you listening by audio out there on TalkStream Live and iHeart and Orange Radio and TuneIn Radio, listening while you're driving or working on your favorite project, pay close attention because we're going to go to my website, which is at brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew.com. Those of you watching by video, we're just going to click this button and it's going to take us directly to my website, which is brooksagnew.com. You'll know you're at the right place because it says, I'm Brooks Agnew. There's my picture. It doesn't get any easier than that. It's not a real busybody website. You scroll down just about a finger or two. and you'll see two blue buttons. The one on the right says, get my free newsletter. It doesn't get any easier than that, folks. Get the free newsletter. It comes out Wednesdays and Sundays. It's short. It has a link to tonight's program. It has a short clip from what we've been talking about tonight. And it also has links to other goodies that will be important to you, where I'm appearing and what products you can get for yourself. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to click on this button right here, which will take us to my website called Health and Safety inside this website. Very easy to get to. You see how easy that was? One click and you're there. We just make it super simple for you. Here is where you can find out information on how to get ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, fenbendazole, and mebendazole. These are the medications that people take to treat their own diseases. Under the 2017 Act, this is totally legal for you to do. We are currently having some shipping issues after the 9-week Democrat shutdown of U.S. Customs. They accumulated a few million packages sitting in warehouses and no people to ship them. After the shutdown was over, they dumped it all on the USPS, the United States Postal Service, and they're just not able to keep up. So it has actually been 14 days since we have received a package through the U.S. mail. 14 days. That's the first time in the 25 years that I've been in business, and the first time in 6 years that I've been in this business that this has happened. I don't think it'll happen again. I think all these packages are going to come in at one time. It's so bad that the Postmaster General of the U.S. Post Office, the main guy in the United States, was called before a Senate committee, and Josh Hawley said, I'm getting millions and millions of complaints of people not getting their mail. What is going on? And he laughed at Josh Hawley, laughed at his face. This is not what you want to do to Josh Hawley. I don't know if the Postmaster General is going to last much longer. He should be fired because the U.S. Post Office is something in their policies is way off. But it's going to be fixed. It always is. If you scroll down just a little bit, you'll also see one more product that I endorse, which is True Niagen. You've heard about NAD. You know what it does. It builds the mitochondria in your muscles. But you make your own NAD. This is the best NAD for your body. But when you hit 45, that production rate slows way down, and you begin to slow way down. And then you begin to put on weight, and then your body fat begins to go up because you can't maintain muscle. And then as your telomeres burn shorter and shorter and shorter, eventually you die of malnutrition, which is called starvation. It's called old age. What True Niagen does is it stimulates your body to remake the NAD, your best NAD, which builds the mitochondria in your muscles, gives you that endurance, clarity of mind, clear eyesight, smooth skin, all that stuff the NAD does for you. True Niagen is the oldest and the best product out there. There are a lot of flash in the pan products out there. You can't eat NAD, okay? No matter what anybody tells you, your stomach acid destroys it. Maybe a little bit leaks through to your system, but you don't want artificial NAD in your system. You don't want to shoot it in your muscles. You don't want to take it in your veins. It costs $800 to do that every time you sit down. Just make your own NAD. Take the True Niagen. Try it for a couple months. I promise you'll never stop taking it again. It's marvelous stuff. I don't make a dime on this. I use it. I endorse it. I want you to use it. All my friends that use it never, ever stop. And the other is a Zima, is a zinc, magnesium, and vitamin B complex. Virtually none of you are buying this because I do make a little bit of money on the Zima, and I've made zero in the last 90 days. Nothing from Amazon. See that? That means zero, nothing. So I know you're not taking it. But the other product is Insulis. You saw me take it during the break. This is it right here. Now, Insulis is a patented tincture, and what it does, it lowers your A1C numbers. If your doctor is telling you, oh, your A1C numbers are 7, 8, 9, 10, you're pre-diabetic, we need to put you on. And the next thing you know, you're heading for shots of insulin because your insulin resistance is too high and your sugar is too high. Well, that's what Insuless does. Insuless. It means that you lose your insulin resistance. The insulin you're already making just fine does its job. It does its job. It removes and regulates the sugar in your bloodstream. That's what the Insuless does. Now, I just saw somebody wrote in the chat that they just received their first shipment of Insuless. Great stuff. It's reasonable. One of these bottles will last you a couple months. I usually keep a couple on hand. I take it a couple times a day. It's marvelous stuff. My doctor is amazed. All right, let's get back to it because we got stuff we got to talk about. And let me change screens and we're back to full screen. Okay, so can I walk and chew gum? Barely. I drive and chew gum. Yeah, try not to bite my own tongue when I'm chewing gum. Yeah. Cameras can be hacked and turned on your iPhone and laptop. I'm told that your iPhone takes a picture like, I don't know, every 50 seconds or something like that, it takes a picture. I don't know what they're going to see in mine. It stays in my pocket. So they never see anything. Well, they might have seen some hummingbirds today because I had it out. I was sitting on the rocking chair on the back porch watching hummingbirds come to the feeder. I just so fascinated by that bird. But you know, they're very hard to get a picture of because they're like in and out. And you can see with your eye, but the camera can't pick it up. They're so beautiful and so fast. All right, let's finish talking what we were talking about because this is important to get a handle on because we don't talk about Ukraine much anymore. President Volodymyr Zelensky took to the only method he has for raising money, social media, because, I mean, come on, Lindsay was there not long ago and he died. So not many people other than Laura Loomer are wanting to go to Ukraine and speak to Ukrainians because Laura Loomer, as I'll say unequivocally, has lost her mind. My good friend Roger Stone doesn't believe a word she says. She used to be credible back in the day. Remember the the Vegas shooting? Remember that? Laura Loomer was just kind of coming on the scene, and she was there at the press conference. The sheriff was telling what he knew about the Vegas shooting, and she caught him in a lie because the sheriff had said that he just checked in a couple days before, but she had the hotel records. And she said, well, he actually checked in 5 days ago, and I have his hotel records right here. Oh, talk about shut down that news conference. Bam, right away. Well, Laura Loomer was like famous, right? Immediately famous. And one of the things I noticed is she was kind of an independent journalist, right? She was with an organization and then not, and then she was and then not. But the thing about Laura Loomer is she's a Jew first, and then a woman, and then an American, in that order. And it became more and more apparent. So when Facebook, I believe it was, kicked her off, took her presence away, she went to Facebook's headquarters and she chained herself to the door. You remember that? Remember these stunts that Laura Loomer used to do? And she would live stream from here and live stream from there. Well, now she's gone to Ukraine and spoken to somebody allegedly head of the Azov battalion, and she claims that he is not a Nazi. Well, she's an idiot because that's who they are. They're the descendants of the original Nazis. They never went away. And their job was to push the ethnic Russians out of Ukraine. So they attacked them, and relentlessly for 8 years. It got so bad that Russia finally said, okay, we're coming in. First thing he did when he rolled over the border is gather up all the orphans, emptied out all the orphanages. They brought hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of buses with them, loaded them up with the kids, and took them to Moscow, back to their families, their extended families in Russia. And they were placed in Russian homes. The sale of Russian children across the globe ended. The experimentation on Russian children by biolabs in Ukraine ended, but it was too late. All the weapons had already been developed. So Zelensky takes to social media this last week to urge partners to rapidly send more air-to-air missiles, more anti-air missiles. It is crucial that our partners realize that delays in their delivery or a reluctance to provide anti-ballistic systems lead precisely to such horrific casualties and destruction. Now, you forgot to mention that all of their rocket launch sites are in residential areas. Partners who are not ready to help more actively with the supply of interceptors right now can help by imposing new sanctions. So let me just clarify this just a little bit. Notably, the Russian strikes have expanded to not just city infrastructures, energy cities, military bases, ports, but now Russia appears to be going after prominent businesses because that's where they're running their operations. It comes after Ukraine's repeated attacks on wild berries facilities, Russian online retailer giant comparable to Amazon. Yeah, the Ukrainians bombed it. They bombed it and they injured and killed a bunch of people. The strikes also caused damage to prominent businesses in Ukraine, including the country's largest e-commerce platform, Rosetka and Epicenter, a retail chain comparable to IKEA. If you know what that is, we have an IKEA in Charlotte. In a statement, Epicenter said Russia launched a devastating attack on its manufacturing infrastructure, killing one of its male employees, one employee. In a matter of minutes, Russian missiles destroyed what the company had been building for decades. Yes, they did. Then they go on to say what some of the missiles were, but they also mentioned that there have been some attacks on Kiev, not many. Every single missile impacted, not a single Patriot was able to intercept anything. That means the Russians have gotten very smart with all of their munitions. But they didn't just one day say, hey, let's go attack Ukraine. Let's go attack them. Because Ukraine expanded their long-range drone attacks on Russian territory, including Moscow, including Crimea. They blew up refineries. This is like the Central Valley of California, okay? Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin has explained that in recent months, the number of drones launched toward Moscow has increased significantly, and overall, of all the attacks carried out almost daily against Russian territory, 2/3 of the drones are heading toward Moscow. Last month, Zelensky had announced a 40-day operation of influence, describing a multi-pronged campaign of long-range drone attacks intent on forcing Moscow to halt the war. Like that's really going to work, right? Like that's really going to work. And get to the negotiating table on terms favorable to Ukraine. Well, they're trying to get to the negotiating table on terms favorable to the 5 states that live on the eastern side of Ukraine, the one where the ethnic Russians have lived for over 300 years. Crimea, Zaporizhia, Donetsk. Now the other 2 names escape me. But the point is they've been living there for a long time, and they've been living there peacefully. And most of the missiles that Russia launched did not come from Russia. They came from these oblasts. 20 Iskander MS-400 ballistic missiles, 5 Zircon hypersonic cruise missiles, 2 KN-23 ballistic missiles were launched from Bryansk and Kursk and Voronezh and Rostov. These are all Russian territories inside Ukraine that have all held their elections and are now Russian citizens. They don't need visas to go back and forth between Russia. They're happy with it. They want to be Russians. They don't want to be Ukrainians. They never wanted to be Ukrainians. The Ukraine was an artificial construct of the UN. So now you know why Russia is attacking Ukraine, because Ukraine attacking Russia in an effort to get them to stop the war only makes them fight the war. So if you really want to stop the war, and President Trump could stop this war in 1 hour if he wanted to, he would cut off all military aid to Ukraine. Just cut it off. They're not going to lose Ukraine to Russia. Russia doesn't care about Ukraine. Nobody wants Ukrainians. Europe doesn't want Ukrainians. They don't give them visas to come into Europe. Even the refugees, they'll go into Poland, but they won't go into the rest of Europe. And nobody wants the Ukrainians. They're troublemakers. They're hard workers. They're smart, but they're troublemakers. So only the ethnic Russians on the eastern side of Ukraine are living largely peacefully now, except for occasional attacks by Ukraine. All right. Yes, she's a woman. Don't call her Larry Loomer. Come on. I mean, after the after the Las Vegas shooting, she had to do something because she was a pretty big girl. She lost a lot of weight. She did better with her makeup. But she lost her mind. I don't know what to tell you about Laura Loomer. I used to like her. I used to think she was a pretty straight arrow and she was trying to stay on one side, but now she's just lost it. Like most of the people in the press. Not like Laura Logan. She does a fine job. All right, let's switch gears. I'm tired of talking about war and politics. I want to talk about asteroids. Yeah, when I was in the 8th grade, I think I had gone a lot of years without missing a math question. I mean, literally not missing a math question in school. And I won some kind of award. I can't remember what it was in the 8th grade. It was some kind of award. And the newspaper came to interview me at the school when I was in the 8th grade. And they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said, well, I want to be an asteroid miner. Now, keep in mind, this is 1968. Okay, we had not even gone to the moon yet. And here I am saying I want to be an asteroid miner. And I don't remember what the reporterette did when I said that question. Like, oh, wow, that's really good. Yes, Washaki win. Laura Logan is a lot easier on the eyes than Laura Loomer. But I do remember the question. I do remember the day. So in April of 2029, that's just around the corner, a rare visitor is going to swing through near-Earth space. Asteroid 99942 Apophis. It is a chunk of space rock about 370 meters long, is going to sail past within hailing distance less than 20,000 miles from Earth. 20,000 miles. That's just outside our satellites. Our satellites are out there. 12,500 miles is our geosynchronous orbit for satellites. That's pretty close. It's a big rock. And anything can happen in the next 3 years, right? Scientists have crunched and recrunched and crunched the numbers again for good measure. And they're as certain as they can be at this point that Apophis poses no imminent threat to the inhabitants of Earth, like they would tell us if it was. I think you'd be able to see with binoculars. That's how close it's going to come. The question some astronomers are asking is, do the inhabitants of Earth pose a threat to Apophis? Well, the answer to that question is non-zero. I'll put it that way. Okay, it's not exactly zero. There's a paper that was published in a planetary science journal. In particular, we have out in space a lot of space junk. I told you our geosynchronous orbit is out at 12,500 miles, right? Well, in the old days, back in the 80s and 90s, we used to have geosynchronous satellites for TV. I don't know if you remember, we had Satcom 5 and we had iridium satellites out there that were used for TV, and people had big dishes in their backyard with a low noise amplifier. You remember that? Polar rectangular, yeah, an LNA they're called, low noise amplifier. And what these big dishes would do, some of them were 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet in diameter. You could aim it at that satellite with your automatic controller, and you could select, I think we had 6 satellites that you could aim between. Some had sports and some had all the movies. And this is before they encrypted anything. And you could have a controller box on your TV, and you could watch whatever they were feeding back to the downlinks for the networks. You could just watch it, anything, foreign TV, all that stuff. And then they encrypted it, which basically put the satellite dish owners out of the market. Everything was scrambled, and you had to have a descrambler box, and then it became prohibitively expensive, and then cable came, and what can you say, right? But a lot of those satellites, they're still up there, except they're no longer at 12,500 miles. They're 13,000, 14,000, 15,000 miles out there. And so we have a lot of space junk that could be in the way of Apophis. And it could jeopardize this once-in-a-lifetime scientific opportunity, according to physicist Giulia Schettino and astrodynamicist Alessandro Rossi of the Institute of Applied Physics, Nello Carrara of the Italian National Research Council. Rossi says, I'm an expert both on space debris and on asteroid dynamics. This guy's like way up there on the geek scale, okay? And I've been to Italy, and I've talked to the people at LIGO, smart people. And even though the presentation was in Italian, I could understand everything they were saying because they were using a lot of my slides at the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. So I understood everything they were talking about. But from the very beginning, he said, when I was seeing the usual animations of Apophis's trajectory during the closest approach, I immediately started to wonder if there was any possibility of encounter with the vast population of human-made space debris. And Apophis's close flyby could transform our understanding of asteroids, because it's going to come very close, and it's very big, way bigger than 3 football fields, let's put it that way. As it skims within a very close pass of Earth, our planet's gravity is going to pull on it strongly, enough to alter its spin, potentially trigger landslides and even asteroid quakes, and perhaps reveal what's hidden beneath its surface. We call this the Roche limit. The Roche limit is basically one diameter of Earth. So Earth is approximately 7,700 miles in diameter. So approximately 7,700 miles from Earth is this Roche limit. And if a body that's not very well put together, that is to say a loose association of rocks, gets within the Roche limit, Earth's gravity will overcome its internal gravity and the asteroid will come apart. That's called the Roche limit. Now, it's not quite at the Roche limit. It's not that close, but it's close enough that the gravity is going to have some effect on that asteroid. 2 spacecraft, ESA's Ramses mission and NASA's OSIRIS-APEX, they're going to watch this encounter unfold real time. They're going to turn its cameras toward that asteroid. They're going to watch it come by and see if it comes apart, see if its spin changes, see if Earth's gravity affects it at all. But interpreting those changes becomes much harder if Apophis receives an unexpected nudge from something else, like a piece of space junk that it might collide into, because some of these satellites are pretty large. In those days, we didn't make CubeSats. They were large satellites with solar panels on them and retro rockets to keep them in orbit and in position. They're big. They're big. They weigh 2,500, 3,000 pounds. So Rossi and Schettino set out to investigate whether the asteroid could encounter some of our junk during its passage through the region around geosynchronous orbit. And the space around Earth that extends out to, as I said, about 15,000 miles, they expect to find little cause for concern. Most human-made debris circles Earth much closer in, and I would say much is with a little m. We're talking maybe a mile. Maybe a mile. To maybe, 15,000 miles. It's pretty close. So the projected trajectory of Apophis carries it harmlessly past Earth and the moon. He said, Rossi said, I have to say that I was expecting a null experiment, no possible interactions. I was struck by the possibility to have some objects potentially come to less than a few kilometers from the asteroid. Okay, like a mile or two. When the researchers ran the simulations, though, null experiment was definitely not what happened. Null means zero. That's what I was telling you earlier in the article. It's a non-zero chance that there could be a collision. They modeled Apophis' trajectory, very well defined after that number crunching, and the number of known objects in geosynchronous orbit, and that's an altitude where an orbiting body can keep up with Earth's rotation, typically around, 36,000 kilometers, somewhere around there. They also added a population of unseen debris to the simulations before modeling the possible outcomes left over from collisions that happen way out there in space, and these things become shotgun blasts out there in space, totally unpredictable. And in most scenarios, everything works out just fine. But to the researchers' surprise, there's a small but very real possibility that something in geosynchronous orbit will smack into Apophis. You probably remember NASA's double asteroid redirection test. Remember the DART? We sent a missile out there to see if we could redirect a asteroid, to see if we could redirect its course. It deliberately altered the orbit of the asteroid Dimorphos by crashing a spacecraft into it. Well, this isn't that. This isn't purposeful like that. The concern isn't that a piece of space debris could significantly change Apophis' trajectory this time. Indeed, the impact itself wouldn't necessarily be catastrophic. A small crater or plume of debris could even provide additional observations for the spacecraft that are going to be watching it. The bigger problem is that it would muddy the interpretation of the flyby. Scientists hope to watch Earth's gravity reshape Apophis during the flyby. An unexpected collision beforehand could make it much harder to keep the two events separate. Like, we want to watch what Earth's gravity, what its effect is on an asteroid. Now, if it is a type C asteroid, which means it's organic, or a type M asteroid, which means it's metallic and probably held together very tightly, like a big iron rock or something, or a big tin rock. If it's organic, it's not that well held together. It's like a big turd floating through space, right? The unexpected collision is going to be difficult to separate the data, let's put it that way, which changes were caused by our planet and which were caused by the impact. So the most important thing to stress is that any impact on the asteroid would not alter its orbit in any significant way this time. The consequences would be most probably the formation of a small crater and a plume of ejecta, or shatter a piece off of it. Both might be detectable by the spacecraft, which in turn would not be affected by the ejecta because it's further out even than that. There is also the possibility that the instruments that Ramses should place on the surface, like a gravimeter or a seismometer, will detect a signal from the impact. That's kind of interesting interesting experiment. It would be fun to be in the room. A collision also wouldn't trigger a runaway, Kessler syndrome, unlike the crowded environment of low Earth orbit, which would be a real mess if there was a collision out there. Debris in the geostationary region is much more sparse. We don't have that many satellites out there, 12,500 miles, weather satellites, TV satellites, phone satellites, stuff like that. But we even tag team those off in what are called near Earth orbit or far Earth orbit, which is about 500 miles out from Earth. But even an impact ejected a few rocks, the likelihood of them hitting something else is very small because it's a sparsely populated zone. And because the diameter is so much larger than Earth now, we're talking about a very, very big sphere and not many satellites in that sphere. So what the study really highlights is just how little we know about the population of small debris lurking in high Earth orbit. While large objects are routinely tracked, smaller fragments, we can't see them. We can't see them. And if we try to put a satellite out there that's moving through this space, not in geosynchronous orbit, a piece of debris traveling at 18,000 miles an hour, even if it's the size of an ice cube, has a lot of energy, right? Rossi hopes Apophis's flyby will provide extra motivation to improve that picture before 2029. We could do that. There's plenty of time to put something else up there with better optics, better radar. He was asked the question, and he said, yes, I do, when he was asked about whether the encounter should spur more complete survey of high-altitude space debris. In the next few years, the new surveillance telescopes will going to be introduced by the EU, the European Union Space Surveillance System. They're going to be used exactly for this purpose of increasing our knowledge of high Earth orbit populations. And I've often said, there's a whole industry awaiting for space debris management, salvage of space gear. Of course, the problem is that a lot of the countries that put that space gear up there don't want it messed with. They don't want the cameras. They don't want the capabilities of those satellites to be captured in any way. They were clandestine when they were put up, and they want them to remain clandestine. So they don't want salvage people going up there and say, hey, guess what we found? Right? All right. Let's talk about the moon. I love to talk about the moon. You know that early this morning, I tried to announce it on Sunday, but I didn't get there because we had a lot of technical problems, which ate up my time. But SpaceX's rocket this morning slammed into the moon, and it's about 7 stories high. It's not a small piece, but it landed at about 700 miles an hour. Not terrifically fast, not like 7,000 miles an hour, so not a tremendous amount of energy. But we have lunar orbiting satellites that look down at the moon, and we're trying to get a look at the crater, and if there is a remaining plume that blew up into, from it. I don't think it had any fuel on it. It was just a deadfall. They want to look at the aftermath. So it was about 2:30 this morning. I wasn't up, and I didn't see anything about it on the news. The upper stage of SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket crashed into the moon. NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and NASA's ShadowCam instrument on the Korea Pathfinder Lunar Orbiter will look for opportunities to capture before and after imagery of the impact site. NASA spokesperson Rob Garner of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland said, image availability depends on several factors, including the impact location, lighting conditions, and when each spacecraft's orbit next carries it over that area, which may take a few days to receive any imagery. While you've likely seen the first stages of Falcon 9 rockets gracefully land back on Earth for reuse, the rocket's 9,000-pound upper stage is disposable. Typically, it's sent to burn up in our atmosphere after its missions are over. However, that wasn't possible with this particular rocket, which launched 2 private lunar satellites, or lunar landers. Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost and Tokyo-based iSpace's Resilience to a high moon crossing Earth orbit in January of 2025. The Falcon 9 upper stage used most of its fuel getting to this distant location and couldn't make it back to deorbit in Earth's atmosphere, so it crashed into the moon. There's going to be a lot more of this because we're going to be sending a lot more equipment to the moon. That means they have to use all the fuel unless we refuel it in space, which is quite possible with the new starships. I don't know if you've noticed, but Starship 13 and Starship 12 both had processes on the outside of the craft. So if you're looking at, let's just say this bottle is the Starship, there were 2 large bumps on the outside of it. And what these bumps are for is to connect another Starship to it, to dock Starship side by side to it. And so the plan is very soon, maybe next year, we're going to launch a refueler up into orbit. This is a Starship that's a gas tank, basically. It's filled with natural gas, compressed natural gas, methane. And then when Starship goes up in orbit, it's going to use most of its fuel to get into orbit because it's largely empty on the inside. It's going to deploy its satellites or whatever. And then it's going to refuel. It's going to refuel in orbit. And then it's going to take off from there and go to the moon. That's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing to have a Starship in orbit around the moon. What would even be more amazing is if they could land a Starship on the moon. Now, I don't think there'll be enough fuel unless we put a fueler in orbit around the moon. That could happen. That could happen. If we could land it on the moon safely and it's large enough that it can contain a lot of equipment. It could offload a lot of equipment. Just with internal cranes and cables and stuff like that, it could offload a lot of equipment. Now, I don't know if you know that SpaceX or Tesla's, Elon Musk's organization also makes a robot called the Optimus. And it has a couple shortcomings. One is it cannot handle that much weight. It can only pick up maybe 300 pounds, and it can only carry it for short distances. 200 pounds a little more, 150 pounds a little more. But right now, the Optimus is powered by batteries, and it has to recharge often. If it's going to do heavy work like that, it's got to recharge often. But it could also be fitted with plutonium batteries. If it's fitted with plutonium batteries, you get 2 benefits. Number one is it generates heat. The plutonium battery itself generates heat, which could keep the electronics of the Optimus warm during the lunar night, because it gets down to about 20 degrees Kelvin, 23 degrees Kelvin, and that's pretty damn cold. That's like 250 degrees below zero. It's way cold, colder than liquid nitrogen. Machines and electronics do not work well during that, and batteries die, except for plutonium batteries. They do pretty well in it. The second thing is it has virtually endless life. It could run for about 20 years. And if Optimus and its new, what is called reverse planetary gear actuators that work its arms and legs, it can pick up more weight. They can pick up about 300 or 400 pounds, which on the moon is about a ton. Okay, because it's 1/6 the gravity of Earth. So something that weighs 400 pounds on Earth, or weighs 2,400 pounds on Earth, only weighs 400 pounds on the moon. Got that? So 2,400 pounds is a pretty good sized vehicle. It's heavier than my RX-7 is downstairs. It could pick my RX-7 up on the moon, and it could move it somewhere and set it up. So if Optimus could be used to assemble habitats on the moon, then subsequent starships could take people, and the people could use the habitats that were built by the robots. See, this is a brilliant idea, isn't it? Has he publicized it? No. But I promise you, if I'm thinking of it, he's thinking of it. Our minds work very much alike. I don't have his money, but I have his brains. So I think this is where it's going. And Starship could carry like 100 Optimus robots outfitted with plutonium batteries. They could do quite a lot of work. Obviously, you don't need to take 100 robots, but if you took 10 and a bunch of equipment, you could actually set it up. And it doesn't matter if the Starship comes home or not. We just launch another Starship. However, if the Starship is in good shape, you could refuel it on the moon, and fly it home. Wouldn't that be amazing? Would that not be amazing? That would be truly the point at which we become a multi-planet race. Let's see here. I want to talk about, okay, let's talk a little bit about that. I have a few minutes left. I want to talk about the would-be assassin. How did this happen? Aaron Farinacci. He's a man who murdered his own father. Oh, I know who this guy is. This is the guy that set all the fires in Oregon. Aaron Farinacci. He's a man who murdered his own father because he was asked to wash dishes. Is now accused of setting a fire that burned roughly 700 houses to the ground and forced 65,000 people to flee. Yes, he killed his own dad over dishes, and he wasn't in prison. That's just the way the prison system works in Oregon. His father, his name is Aaron Farinacci. He's 37. Back in 2010 in Mesa, Arizona, Farinacci got into an argument with his father because his father asked him to do the dishes, so he shot him dead. Then he pointed the gun at his own mother, and then he shot himself, but he lived. He was charged with first-degree murder, but that got knocked down, and he pleaded guilty to manslaughter. And now we fast forward to Spokane, Washington. Not Oregon, Washington. Pretty close to one another. The Old Trails fire tore through neighborhoods north of the city. It destroyed about 700 structures, most of them homes. As many as 65,000 people were forced to evacuate. Investigators say it was intentionally set. It was not climate change, as the news was reporting. And they arrested Aaron Farinacci. Police say he had waterproof matches and a butane lighter on him, and they found him kneeling in the grass right where the fire started. The sheriff says he's been contacted before for arson-related behavior. Here's the part that will make you sick. On the day the fire started, a witness reported a nervous man in the trees. Police actually stopped Farinacci a mile away, questioned him, and they let him go. Now, 700 families may be staring at the ashes of everything they built. But here's who got him. Ordinary citizens. Neighbors who saw something wrong and refused to stay quiet. The prosecutor said this case was cracked by vigilant citizens who spoke up. They saw something and they didn't say something. They did something. He's charged with first-degree arson, held on $1 million bond. How does a man plead guilty to killing his own father and end up free with a lighter next to 65,000 people's homes? Somebody needs to answer for that. I doubt they will. But now you know it wasn't climate change. And also we'll talk about the Democrat business plan. I don't know how they got into this mess other than greed and hatred. It's been tried and tested and found to work just fine. Democrats didn't just win New York City, they stole it. A bombshell audit just uncovered 228,000 fraudulent votes, more than enough to erase Mamdani's entire 207,570 vote victory. Let that sink in. Out of the votes examined, 7% came from non-existent voter records. 6% used fake Social Security numbers. 10% belonged to people who don't even live in New York. 1% had no Social Security number at all. And that's nearly 250,000 phantom ballots, right? So Giuliani did not hold back. Here's what he said. Do I think the Democrat Party cheated in the election? The answer is a resounding yes. They are the most crooked enterprise in the history of the United States. This was not an election, it was a heist. Ma'am Danny is sitting in City Hall as an illegitimate mayor, installed by fraud, phantom voters, and the same dirty tricks we've seen before. The numbers don't lie, the truth is out, and the establishment is already trying to bury it. Got to share it everywhere, people. You hear it on America Free Radio. You have to share it with your friends. Yeah, I know Tupac's. That's funny. Shizzo Stan says, I only burn down a state if I get a speeding ticket. Whatever. Yeah. Climate change. Right, climate change. That's funny. You crack me up, man. I'm scrolling back up here just to take a look at the chat room, see if there's anything I missed. Yeah, I think the guy's probably going to hang for this. Washington doesn't care about a lot, but they do care about their trees. They don't take care of the trees. They just care about the trees. Don't cut this tree. We have to thin out all this brush or we're going to have a forest fire we can't stop. Doesn't matter. Don't cut the trees. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? Yeah, I'm worried about the Democrat business plan. I think the cheating is going to be epic. It has to be. It has to be. Yes, I know, Mark. Every election is rigged in one way or another. But there is a way to curb it. A very simple plan, a very simple 3-step plan. So simple. Vote once, in person, with ID. That's it. Doesn't that sound simple? Oh my God. Vote once, in person, with ID. And I'm a big fan of the purple finger, too. Tip that finger on your way out. And if we see you show up at another precinct with a purple finger, you're not voting. Yeah. What drought? Gosh, it's rained 20 days out of 30 here in North Carolina. My yard, we cut it yesterday. And if I didn't get the grass cutters over here to cut the yard, we had to bale it. It's been growing like crazy. It's August, for crying out loud. Yeah, I wish the grass outside my window right here, I wish it would grow. I use that, what is it, Grow Trax? Yeah, Grow Trax. It's a green kind of mat that you roll out. It has the seed and the fertilizer and cellulose all built into the mat. So you lay out your topsoil, get it all smooth and everything, roll this mat out on it, stake it down so the wind doesn't pick it up and throw it across the yard. And then you just keep it wet. You just hose it a couple times a day, and then it rained for days and days and days after that. And if you're thinking about doing Grow Trax, I'm not really happy with it because the darn stuff dissolved in 72 hours. I thought that the green mat would kind of hang out for a while, like straw does. Straw hangs out for months. It just holds the moisture, keeps the seed from blowing away, provides little nutrients for the ground, and lets the grass get started, right? Well, I didn't want to go through all that. I said, let's try the Grow Trax. It's only 27 cents a square foot. I got 4,500 square feet out here in my front yard, so we tried it. And I got something growing. It doesn't look like any fescue I've ever seen. It's like coming up with one stem, and then it has like grass growing out of the top of the stem. It doesn't look like fescue to me. I'm just saying. But next year, we may have a little grass there. If I don't see grass by my birthday, May 27th, I'm just going to sod the whole thing. I'll just save up the money and just sod the whole thing because I want a beautiful front yard. And it's just not happening with grass seed. Well, that's right, JJ. It makes too damn much sense. We can't do that. Vote once in person with ID. Now, does it have to be election day? Okay, we can have election week. We can have election 3 weeks. I don't care. No mail-in ballots. And above all, absolutely positively, no drop box ballots. I think that's what lost all these elections going back to, to 2008. We have states like Washington that don't have in-person elections. Everybody votes by mail. But the mail is so crappy now. I mean, we're going on 15 days with no deliveries here. That's insane. That's just insane. Of course, I know what they're doing. They're queuing the mail. They're queuing it by zip code. So the big cities, the big zip codes, they get priority because they get the big trucks and they get the mail here and they get their packages delivered. But little zip codes like Little Hickory right here, 29,000 people, we're on the bottom of the totem pole. But still, we've been in business, 22 years, 6 years I've been in this business. And I've seen maybe 6 or 7 days go by without a box coming in, but not 15. It's just crazy. It's just like I have 7 offices and a package arrives at one of the 7 offices almost every day. Nothing at all 7 offices for 15 days. It's really pissing my customers off, really. And I don't know what to do about it. I don't know who to call. I go down to the post office and they go, we don't know. I say, look, I got 3 pages of tracking numbers. 3 pages of tracking numbers. Nothing. A tracking number is a guarantee that you can track that package to your door. All they do is just add more days. Oh, it should be here by the 23rd. Oh, by the 27th. Oh, by the 5th of August, it'll be here. Well, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You get some reliability in the USPS. Fire that postmaster general. And let's get some commerce going. And do you know what I heard through John Fetterman, of all people? The Democrats are planning on shutting government down again in September. What the F, people? What is going on? How are we allowing the Democrats, a minority party, to hold us hostage and hold up the operation of government? They're talking about shutting down government again, and this time for maybe 9 weeks. That's crazy. It's crazy. When they shut down government, everybody suffers. Well, the thing about it is, Lyle, getting ivermectin over the counter is you don't know what you're getting, okay? You got to buy directly from the FDA-approved factories. If you don't, it could be filled with titanium dioxide and all kinds of bullshit. Over the counter gets really dangerous. Go to Mexico and buy stuff, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Plus, the over-the-counter stuff is 3 milligrams. 3 milligrams. You have to buy 4 of them to get what you get out of one 12-milligram tablet. Do the math. And each tablet costs you $1. I sell 12 milligrams for under $1. All tablets, all 500 milligrams, 444 milligrams, 250 milligrams, and 12 milligrams, all less than $1. Because I'm not in this business to make money. I'm in it to save lives. It's a big difference. Big difference. All right, Earth Explorers, that is it for America Free Radio tonight. We'll be back on Sunday night. Remember to go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little bit every day. And before long, you'll save the planet. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. Do we have to love our enemies? Yes. Do you have to show them love? No. All right? Keep the two separate and you'll be doing just fine. All right, Earth Explorers, that is it for us. We are out of here. Peace.
listening to Revolution